Hello, Odie Hawkins.
Hello, my name is Odie Hawkins. Oh, you did say my name.
Yes.
My name is Odie Hawkins, and we're starting yet another segment, another segment of A Moment in Time. This one concerns itself with what I'm calling the Insensitive Society. And I think in view of what the Supreme Court has just done concerning guns for all who want to shoot people, and also for a destruction of women's rights to have the rights to their bodies, that this fits right in. So the less said about that, the better. And I'll sweep us right into the Insensitive Society.
Mm-hmm.
This is dedicated to my loud, inconsiderate next-door neighbors, rude beasts who never resisted the opportunity to be as negative and disturbing as possible.
Former next-door neighbor.
Authentic representatives of the Insensitive Society. Say that again.
Former next-door.
Former,
door.
because to the left and to the right, to the north and to the south of us,
Wonderful.
they don't exist.
They're beautiful.
Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
This refers to former,
Yes.
which of course would fit the present day circumstances for a lot of people who were surrounded by the people that I'm going to be reading about.
Yes.
I don't completely agree with my friend Donna, who states in her dry metallic tones that all began to go downhill when the guys in the gas station stopped checking our oil, wiping off our windshields and saying, "Have a safe trip." No doubt those might have been contributing factors, but I feel the greatest building block for the development of the Insensitive Society may be labeled television. In any case, millions would never be able to remember when gas station attendants checked oil, wiped off windshields, or said anything courteously. But most of us can easily recall the vivid squabbling that we witnessed yesterday night, as they say in some places, or one of the argument shows. Perhaps they could be called Springerizations. Those television spectaculars that emphasize the most dysfunctional elements of our domestic/emotional circumstances. They usually hinge on the purely predictable. Somebody done somebody wrong. They seem to take a special interest in the dysfunctional element if it's interracial/intergender, intergender, transgender, cross-gender, and is willing to fling out, willing to wash all of their dirty stuff in front of millions of TV sets, TV fools. The people in the situations are dredged up from the sludge of shallow emotional barrels, stirred around by a number of unscrupulous hosts. The studio audiences set the low-level tone of things by howling at violent exchanges, violent actions, attempted violent actions, and as much pornographic language as the participants can scream, bleep at each other. The host channels the activities into the murkiest channels he can possibly think of, and the audiences applaud his negative guidance. It would not be difficult to imagine that thousands of home viewers locked into an emotional embrace with their studio peers are also chanting and clapping for the worst that the host can provoke. Spanish language version available. The most dysfunctional elements tend to hinge on any kind of decidedly kinky sexual experience. The kinkier, the better. This daily feeding seems to serve as an emotional Novocaine for the public perception of what could be considered good or loud, best or worst, humane or simply stupid. After repeated injection of this kind of dope, what kind of insensitivity settles in? An insensitivity that is creating the society we're trying to live in, or that many of us unwillingly will find ourselves in. We may not be able to point a fickle finger at the gas stations to blame them for the decibel increase in our lives. That honor will have to go to other sources. I think the first time I really noticed the decibel increase was in a movie theater when my date leaned over and shouted in my ear, "The sound is awfully loud, don't you think?" Suddenly I became aware that we were being saturated in loudness. I trotted up the aisle behind 5 other sensitive types to speak to the manager about the deafening level of the sound in the theater. I don't think it gave any of us a lot of pleasure to see him remove wads of cotton from his ears as we spoke to him. He received our complaints with a professional smile. "Well, if you're dissatisfied, we'll be more than happy to refund your tickets. I'll take you up on your offer, but what about the loudness?" "Some people seem to like it loud," he said, as he replaced the cotton wad in his ears. We stared at each other helplessly, trying to figure out why anyone needed Dolby sound decibels for a subtitle film. Since that evening, years ago now, the decibels levels have climbed steadily. The more deaf we become, the more deaf we became. The louder we must talk, sing, turn up the sounds that separate us from each other. Personally, on the greedy level, I'm trying to invest in as much audio stock as possible. I hear that there will be a bull market there at the end of this century or perhaps before. It's the crucial scene in the 3rd act of one of Shakespeare's best. It's the scene in Casablanca where Ilsa may not decide to go back into the life of resistance with Victor Laszlo. It's the moment that the two lovers have been probing for. It's all of these things and so much, many more, that we can't begin to list them. That they're being interrupted by the sneaky pealing of the cell phone. Coitus cellphonitis plagues us, and there's no end of it in sight, pun intended. On the honest to God level, there's no telling what it's all going to become, no pun intended. Wars, man-made famines. These are 2 of the greatest failings of the human race because they're both completely unnecessary and avoidable. Wars on earth are clearly the result of irrational negative logic. It has to be. How else can we explain why people would continue to kill each other when it poses a no-win result for all concerned? The people who are victorious, the winners, will say, "We won, we defeated you. We are the conquerors, you are the conquered." How could any human being claim a victory over another human being after they both lost friends, family, respect for the sanctity of life? It's impossible to trace the DNA of the urge to war, but we can be certain that the marker was first fixed in the first male psyche. Perhaps things would be different if men were the ones having babes. Man-made famines, like the vicious wars that have claimed a place in our planet's history, are also the results of irrationality and negative logic. By definition, a man-made famine is one that is the result of man's unwillingness to pay attention to the forces of nature or his misuse of the resources that nature has made available. Unfortunately, men frequently use famines as surrogate allies in their wars with each other. The premise is simple. If we can deny your population food, we will have a weakened enemy. That is probably the grimmest misuse of a famine. Oh God, Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Glory to Ukraine.
Yes.
But there are also other reasons and ways to impose starvation on the population. Hitler used his concentration camps. Others have used blockades and embargoes to accomplish their purposes. One of the most unique ways that some of the more powerful nations have used to create famines is to give the famine-ridden nations food. Charitable gifts of corn or rice will prevent the famine-stricken nation from growing their own food, thus guaranteeing future crop food shortages and ultimately famine. Smart, huh?
Very smart. Very like that.
Interpersonal relations in our insensitive society have become so rotten that many psychologists and other mental health care specialists have titled this the age of rage.
Ooh.
Dr. Jack Lee has been studying the various types of rage that are prevalent in our society today. I won't grocery list these in any particular order. Let's start with road rage.
Whoa.
I've heard the argument made that we wouldn't have any evidence of road rage if the automobile had not been invented. I'd have to agree with that.
That's a thought I had not thought of.
Yes, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. But didn't they have road rage when they had horse and buggies? But less
Well,
likely probably because then the animals...
Did they have road rage when they didn't have any wheels?
Mm.
Back in the Stone Age.
Okay. That's way back. Okay.
Maybe they were throwing rocks at each other, but they certainly weren't running over each other.
This is true, okay.
Abruptly, our dimensions have expanded way beyond the horse and buggy. We have more roads to occupy, more power at our command. With the horse and buggy, we could only envision ourselves in terms of hundreds of miles. Now we can travel thousands of miles. Our perimeters have been expanded beyond a past generation's wildest dreams. And with the dreams have come nightmares, people who feel that they own the road.
They do.
Or that they should own the road. The huge vehicles that we see these days are clearly an expression of that wish fulfillment. The subcurrent rage is fueled by exaggerated feelings of self-importance inspired by the vehicle one is driving. The little man / woman weighing under 150 pounds, soaking wet, suddenly becomes a Humvee SUV monster. The rage can also be found on those who are suffering from lack of self-esteem. Their cars are just ordinary. And finally, in relation to the various forms of road rage, there are thousands who are feeling enraged because they're driving, and they know deep down that they're not really going anywhere. Postal rage, or going postal, is an unfair hit on the postal service. I would choose to call it job rage, because I'm certain that there have been many, probably will be, many more people who go on killing rages in ordinary occupations other than in the post office. The big question is, why does it happen? The biggest reason, I think, is dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction with the work environment, the lack of satisfaction to be derived from the work itself, and the simple human need to be known as more than a time card labor unit.
Well said.
I hear you, sister, don't stop. Purely personal rage, as distinguished from road rage or job rage, stems from many of the neurotic circumstances that make so many areas of modern life so meaningless. So meaningless. I think the chant in the movie Network sums it up pretty well. We're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. The problem with the chant, the mantra, is that it is so vague. Mad as hell about what? Not going to take what anymore?
Right.
These are not black people saying that, I'm sure. Otherwise, they'd probably been shot in their windows. Of course, in the recesses of our collective national consciousness, we know what the chant really means, but at the same time, there's something completely inarticulate about it, a bone stuck in our throats that we couldn't follow or swallow or spit out. I need not put quotation marks around racial rage. It is not something that needs to be highlighted or underlined. It's all around us. And despite the blind members of our society on the right, mostly, who have heralded the premature death of racism, it is alive and kicking.
Yes, it is.
As a matter of fact, racial rage might be at an apex in this era. Let there be no doubt about it. The racial rage fire is fueled by the white male perception that they have lost their privileged position in our society, and fortunately, they have. In their attempts to regain a position they never should have had in the first place, they're willing to do raw murder, commit judicial crimes, develop coded laws, circle their wagons in a last-ditch effort to retain the glories of their past. Confederate monuments, y'all, Confederate monuments, y'all, Confederate monuments. And they aren't all just Southerners either, y'all.
No.
The rampant sexual rage that finds its most extreme form in pedophilia was probably nailed into place during slavery. Oh, pause for a sip here.
Oh, yes. We need a new cup.
Once again, as all honest Americans know, white men were kings of the hill at that juncture in our history and could commit any abhorrent sexual act they could imagine. The master could rape his slaves, male and female, young and old, and their children, and his children by those who were enslaved, without any legal consequences to be considered. We must remember any concern for the moral, physical, humane rights of the enslaved was kicked to the curb when slavery was institutionalized. The master could even rape his own wife and children with impunity, and they often did just that. The slave era, which lasted for hundreds of years, was the heyday for the rapist, the pedophile, and the deviant. Astounding as it is, the psychosexual history of our country is seldom considered when we write, discuss, or attempt to theorize about why there are so many sexual weirdos amongst us. It may simply be a part of the country's DNA. I would like to suggest that the pathology of some of the sexual rage that we see these days is a direct result of a loss of sexual privilege, the loss of the right to commit perversions. Yes, they're as mad as hell because they can't take it anymore. Of course, someone will ask, how does that explain black sexual rage? I suspect the foregoing will go a long way toward explaining that. After all, the concept of a motherfucker was given birth in America, not Africa. Motherfuckers. Dr. Lee continues, I suspect that academic rage and political rage might be bleeding from the same vein. We hold this truth to be self-evident, that America, like most Western states, has always been suspicious of and a trifle hostile to its intellectuals, its thinkers, and those heroic figures who tried to fight the intelligent wars. In every way possible, economically, socially, politically, the academics have been relegated to a lower caste level. Teachers are paid far below the price of their worth to our society. Socially, they've been usually labeled something mildly degrading. Oh, he's just an egghead.
Yes.
Or a nerd. And on the political side, they've usually been victims of the political system, seldom the beneficiaries. Woodrow Wilson was probably the last president we've had who had any connections to academia. It's okay for the politician to be smart. Didn't Clinton go to Oxford on scholarship? But he shouldn't represent anything intelligent. I'll get back to you as soon as I finish this. Academic has acquired the coating of something rigid, unimaginative. And I feel it has made many academicians angry and foul-tempered. You can get a real sense of this from reading their obscure theories in a number of academic journals. The political rage, the political rage is more widely shared. It doesn't take hundreds of studies, surveys, or polls to determine that many Americans of all political persuasion feel left out of the political process. Not just left, not just right, but even in the middle. They have reasoned that money and television determine the worth of the candidate's value, not their votes. This reasoned opinion has created a reservoir of non-voters, people who feel impotent because they don't think that their vote has any value, and outraged because one political race after another clearly demonstrates that fact. We only have to look at the last presidential coup for validation of the impotent voters' anger. The young/old rage has reached epidemic proportions, viciously driven by unscrupulous hustlers who have developed ingenious techniques to nourish the neuroses that they make money from. By utilizing every medium they can buy into, they have convinced the young that they should never grow old. Can I hear something from the audience?
Yes, never grow old.
And that they should hate the old, and convinced that the old, that they should despise the young. Clever advertising seldom reveals any link between being young once upon a time and eventually becoming old. The fresh ads of the taut bodies, their hair-written heads and gloriously white teeth simply reflect the brainwasher's fantasies. And too few question those parodies of real life.
Wow.
We are taught that no one wants to get old. Growing old is equivalent to a living death compounded by arthritis and loss of power. The advertisers have even convinced many of the old, senior citizens, what is the opposite of senior citizen? That they can be young forever. Take 3 or 6 of these 5 times a day and you'll feel young again. Swallow 10 spoons of this every morning and you'll feel young again. It may not taste good, but you'll feel young again.
Being tortured by your parents.
I heard that. Wear this, and you'll feel young again. By feeding on the insecurities that are promoted by the usual suspects, we are saturated by people whose chronological identities have been smashed out of shape. You can't dye your hair and then shuffle along because you're 80 years old and then be young at the same time. It don't work. How did it do it, baby?
It confuses my mind. Shuffle. You
And she was 80.
Yes,
but she dyed her hair.
The dark hair. Okay, from behind she looked young, but she walked like a very old person.
Back to the reading.
Yes.
Moments in time.
Moments in time.
The very young want to be a little older so they can buy a beer and drive a car, but not too old because that would entail being forced to take responsibility for being mature. And the mature, the senior citizens, are being encouraged to forget about the experiences they've been able, that have enabled them to avoid the pitfalls of the young. Been there, done that. And so here we are being played on by hordes of neurotic, greedy beasts. To keep my own personal balance in this matter, I'm a baby boomer, get it? A baby boomer. I often think about the advice that this 85-year-old African-American lady who was finally graduated from high school gave. If you don't want to get gray and wrinkled, die young.
Yes. Yes.
And finally, we have a cornucopia of rages, what we might call an umbrella of rages, neurotic flashpoints that often create tragic circumstances. They will say, he was always such a nice old man. We had no indication that he was going to slash his whole family to death with that machete.
Yes.
Or we called him Egghead Johnny, because he always had his head stuck in a book. Who could possibly imagine that he would take 2 of his dad's guns to school and kill 15 of his classmates? Oh no, not Sally. It couldn't have been Sally. Sally was the best bookkeeper we ever had. 20 years on the job. Never missed a day in all that time. Why would she want to shoot 6 strangers? The people sitting at the desk behind her. And so it goes. Rude bureaucrats are irretrievably woven into rude citizens because in many cases they're the same. First, let's define rude by offering 2 examples. He sits behind a desk, or more likely a bulletproof window, in these violence-prone times, refusing to answer pertinent questions that they have no logical answers to. The absurd rule for this is those who don't know won't tell, and those who know refuse to tell because it will reveal the incoherency of their positions.
Oh, right.
Secondly, the petty tyrants, let's say many policemen, who have always lusted for power, or at least the capability to deny others the benefits that a democratic society is supposed to grant all of its citizens. There they are, soft-humped stumbling blocks to all the rights that a democratic society is supposed to offer. But because we become such an insensitive society, none of these used to be so-called norms are existent. Respectful, disrespectful young people are the misdirected spin-offs of an insensitive society.
Yes.
Make no mistake about it. Plainly speaking, I'm saying that disrespectful means, number 1, a lack of reverence for the elders, all of them, living and or dead. 2, a lack of etiquette in how to deal with one's peers and other people. 3, disregard for a civilized lifestyle, period.
Yes.
Now, having said that, let's dig a little deeper to determine how young disrespect is created. We should place the blame for their negligent development squarely on the backs of their elders. The so-called elders who are so busy trying to be young find themselves unwilling and finally unable to enforce the reference codes that must be a part of the growing process. The so-called elders relegating their responsibilities to negative institutions, television, irrelevant schools, the police, never managed to install the legacy of a behavior that must be transmitted if our children are going to become responsible elders. Huh?
Good point, yes.
It gets to be a bit freaky at times, this circular pattern of avoiding the inevitable. And it is inevitable that our children will become disrespectful thugs if the elders do not take the responsibility for demonstrating what's responsibility and respect all about.
Yes. Yes.
As most of us already know, our government tells lies, large and small, every day. Some of our highest government figures and agencies habitually lie. Perhaps this is true of governments all over the planet. This habitual lying by our lawmakers, officials, responsible individuals, Spinnmeisters, tends to create a terrible trickle-down effect, justifying the average citizen's subconscious belief in an insensitive society.
It is insensitive.
A society that rewards those who can get away with it. whatever it is. Since it has been clearly demonstrated by centuries of expert observation that truth is the first casualty of war, we hasten to add that lying must be considered a primary collateral damage.
Whoa. Yes.
When a society becomes benumbed by the lies it has chosen to support, simply to delude itself into thinking that all is good and well, we can be certain that we have burrowed deeply into the core of what constitutes an insensitive society.
Yes.
Graffiti and fascistic patriotism might at first glance seem to have little in common.
No.
But let's delve a bit to see the connecting dots. The people who do graffiti tend to be underachieving, low self-esteem males with serious identity issues.
Right.
I threw my blocker, man.
Oh.
They are desperate to tell the world somebody that they exist. Perhaps we could call their graffiti a form of flag waving. In most cases, the flag waving is for gang and turf. And make no mistake about it, there is an element of fascism connected to the whole business. This is the way I think it should be. This is the way I want it. And that. Ist das nicht zu viel für Sie? Mein kleiner, heutend, dischen Nachen Rottengeinde. The patriots who wave the flag, a form of graffiti. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shake you there.
That's all right.
The patriots who wave the flag, a form of graffiti for many of the super fascists, would never equate themselves to the tiger who is sneaking around late at night spray canning other people's walls, disregarding their rights. But the juxtapositions are there for all to see.
Yes.
The tiger wants to usurp our rights to aesthetic privacy. Ditto for the patriot who wants to wave the flag in your face and have the same meaning happen for you as it does for him. He can't really figure out why some African Americans get a bit tongue-tied trying to sing the national anthem or recite the meaningless flag pledge to the flag. The tagger feels that his cause is just and right, even if his argument is backed up with faults as deep as the ones that dissect California. The flag-waving tagger may depend on arguments that are substantially more sophisticated than the graffiti tagger, but their desired ends are virtually identical. We want to have it our way. The testimonial to this fact can be determined by visiting any gathering of younger people. The sounds of whatever it is that they're listening to is way up because they can't hear whatever it is unless it's played, spoken, or sounded way up. Needless to say, whispering has become a lost art to them. Congruent with the excitement and halcyon decibel levels resulting in subnormal hearing must be added attention deficit disorders. How could it be otherwise? After a lifetime of refined sugar, fast foods, and half-hour sitcoms, there's no wonder that a whole new generation of unchanneled people find themselves unable to focus on any particular subject, thought, or idea for any length of time. Our more unscrupulous politicians depend on this shortened attention span to be able to carry out their worst plans. We don't have to worry about the public. They'll have forgotten we didn't have a real answer for that if we can wait 3 days.
They'll forget.
Obviously, this shortened attention span also makes it difficult to get them involved with subjects that demand sustained attention. You can bet that Rome these days would not have been built if it took more than a day. Thus, we find ourselves afflicted by a weird kind of modern malaise an insensitivity to life because we no longer feel that there's anything or anybody to care about. When we reach the point of not really caring whether the planet we live on lives or dies, then we have definitely become an insensitive society. It seems that we're more than halfway there. Global warming, anybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of an insensitive society and another moment in time.
My goodness, that was interesting.
I didn't mean to get all wrapped up in it, but
Yes, but that shows you demonstrated so often how people are insensitive to others. You know, that it's all, they're selfish.
to what's happening all around them.
Yes.
Okay, I will give you an example really quick.
Okay.
It strikes me as being really, really ironic that on one day, the Supreme Court of the United States of America practically validates the carriage of weapons of mass destruction,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time strikes down the
Yeah, women's rights.
Roe versus Wade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't understand.
I understand. Well, like I tell you, if I was in another country and lived, brought up in another country, I would tell, if my children wanted to come to America, I would have to tell them no, because America has become too
Zola,
violent.
I had that happen. I had that happen in Africa when I was there in Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, a lot of people, we gathered together and drank beer and talk about it. So you know, a lot of people want to go to London, because they felt that their heritage legacy was England,
Right.
but there many more people wanted to come to America, and it's, you know, what's the biggest problem in America you might have? So okay, you are a black person coming from Ghana, and you're not going to be able to pull up a badge saying, I'm Ghanaian, don't shoot me.
Mm-hmm.
All the police will see is a black person, and they will shoot you
Mm-hmm.
because they're scared of you. They are descendants of the patrollers,
Mm-hmm.
the people who were entitled to capture and return escaped Africans into slavery. And so this is almost a direct linkage to that heritage. And some of them, his name is Derek Chauvin, some of them will have their knees on your necks. This is years before I was there in 1992, 95.
Right.
And there was not anything like a George Floyd happening
Right.
on that level
Mm-hmm.
with worldwide attention through
Mm-hmm.
the video.
Right.
They didn't believe me. Oh, no, America. My friend had been there. And he said, the school is wonderful and so forth. Yeah, it's wonderful if you got school fees paid for you by your government.
Right. I know when I sent pictures of homeless streets, they were in disbelief because they said they could not believe this was America. Well, oh, yes, urban nomads. It's got it.
This
Okay.
book right here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this book right here, that you and I have collaborated on.
right. Urban nomads.
The inimitable Zola Salena did the photos and I did the text.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it urban nomads.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in Long Beach
Mm-hmm.
or in LA,
Right.
downtown especially,
Especially.
take a look at the people who are living in tents on the streets.
Right. Mm-hmm. Another part of the insensitive society.
And another moment in time.
It
Yeah.
is website www.odiehawkins.com, and your books can be purchased on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local bookstore. Odie has over 36 books, published books, so certainly there might be one for you in your local bookstore. Just go in and ask for a book by Odie Hawkins.